No frontier AI lab has an investment-grade credit rating. Not one, not at a $965 billion valuation, and not at $47 billion of revenue, which means that when one of them wants a building, somebody else has to sign for it. On the 29th of June, in a converted Bitcoin mine in Tydal, Norway, somebody did. A company that was 6 months old signed a 16-year lease worth $4.7 billion. 5 weeks later, we found out who the building was actually for. Anthropic. Anthropic's contract runs 6 years. The lease runs 16. Nobody has explained who is paying for the other 10. The company that signed is called Volta. It was founded in January by Ricard Boada and Sofia Gumuzio, 2 former Brookfield Asset Management executives. Boada is 33. At Brookfield, he structured infrastructure deals, including a $5 billion partnership with Bloom Energy. In August, Volta came out of stealth with $300 million from Andreessen Horowitz and Altimeter, with Nvidia and Michael Dell's family office writing checks alongside them. That valued a 7-month-old company at $2.4 billion. It has one disclosed customer. On the 4th of August, the shape of the deal became public. $10 billion, 6 years, for 121 megawatts of Nvidia's Vera Rubin systems at Tydal. Bitdeer, the Bitcoin miner that owns the campus, announced its side the same day. Its stock closed up 23%. The site runs on Norwegian hydropower, 100% renewable, at a power usage effectiveness of about 1.1, which would make it among the most efficient large hauls in Europe. Waste heat goes to nearby farms. Phase 1 is due on the 31st of December. Here is the shape of it. Bitdeer is contracted to receive about $4.7 billion over 16 years, and roughly $8 billion over 24 if Volta takes its one-time 8-year extension. Anthropic pays Volta $10 billion over 6. $10 billion is more than Anthropic's entire annual revenue was at the end of last year, when the company was running at about $9 billion. And sitting between the two, holding a 16-year rent bill against a 6-year revenue contract, is a company with $300 million of equity. Investment grade is a rating agency's judgment that you will still be here, and still paying, a decade from now. Landlords who finance buildings with debt need that judgment because their own lenders demand it. Amazon has it, Microsoft has it, Alphabet has it. Anthropic, at $965 billion, does not, because it is privately held, 3 years into selling anything at all, and spending enormous sums on the compute it turns around and sells. So the rating that unlocks a 16-year lease has to be borrowed from somebody who has one. This is not unusual anymore. Alphabet carries about $43.8 billion in data center lease guarantees that sit off its own balance sheet. Those guarantees let former crypto miners issue investment-grade bonds and borrow roughly 2.2 percentage points cheaper than operators without one. Anthropic itself raised about $71 billion of chip lease financing through special-purpose vehicles in roughly 60 days this summer. $35 billion in June, arranged by Apollo and Blackstone. A further $36 billion reported in August. None of it is corporate debt. All of it runs on somebody else's signature. So the question was never whether Anthropic can afford Tydal. It can. The question is, what happens at the end of year 6, when the only contracted revenue in that building expires and the lease still has 10 years left to run? neither announcement addressed it. But it is written into the deal, in the one part of the paperwork that nobody reads out loud: the credit support. Volta's obligations to Bitdeer are backed by roughly $1.3 billion in standby letters of credit, arranged by affiliates of J.P. Morgan and a second global institution that has not been named. $1.3 billion is not a round number. It is a calculated one. Rent for years 7 through 10, the 4 years after Anthropic's contract ends, comes to about $1.17 billion. The letters of credit cover it, with about $130 million to spare. And at the end of year 10, Volta can walk away without penalty, which means that of a $4.7 billion 16-year lease, the firmly committed portion is roughly $2.7 billion. Years 11 through 16, about $2 billion of rent, belong to nobody at all. The honest counterpoint is that this may be perfectly fine. Norwegian hydropower at that efficiency is genuinely cheap to run, and a data hall in 2036, with power already connected to it, may be worth more than one built today, not less. The binding constraint in this industry is grid connection, not concrete. Bitdeer is already building 2 more halls at Tydal, 47 megawatts, for the second half of 2027. If demand holds, years 11 through 16 will sell themselves several times over. The structure only fails if the demand does. But look at what has been assembled here. A company 7 months old, with $300 million of equity, is the entity legally responsible for $4.7 billion of rent. Above it, a bank guarantee covering 4.5 years. Below it, a Bitcoin miner that has already booked the revenue and watched its shares rise 23% in a day. And at the center of it, the party with the money, the demand, and the $965 billion valuation is contractually present for 6 years out of 16. Bitdeer's own announcement never even names Anthropic. It says, a leading AI lab. That is the trade. Anthropic gets 121 megawatts in December without putting a 16-year obligation on its balance sheet, and without waiting for a credit rating it cannot currently get. Bitdeer gets a signed tenant and a re-rated share price. Volta gets a $2.4 billion valuation for standing in the middle and absorbing the years that nobody else wanted. The banks get fees for 4.5 years of risk. Every party in this deal is paid before the gap arrives. The gap arrives in 2032. By then, either Anthropic will have renewed, and every part of this structure will look conservative in hindsight, or it will have moved on to cheaper silicon, and a Norwegian mountain will be holding 121 megawatts of 6-year-old racks with no contracted tenant behind them. The letters of credit expire either way. When a deal is this well engineered, the interesting question is never who gets paid. It is who is still standing there in year 11. Follow the compute.